Theo Palmer had always dreamed of taking his culinary talents beyond Earth. Just not quite this far beyond. Standing in the gleaming kitchen of Stellar Bites, the most prestigious restaurant aboard Nexus Station, Theo stared at the empty shelf where his carefully packed spice collection should have been. Instead, a glowing holographic notice hovered in the air: hazardous materials confiscated, Class 3 chemical agents, pending disposal. "You have got to be kidding me," Theo muttered, running his hand through his unruly brown hair. "They confiscated my oregano?" When the Galactic Culinary Exchange Program had selected him as Earth's representative, the recruitment officer had mentioned some dietary differences between species. What she hadn't mentioned was that everything in a human kitchen apparently qualified as a weapon of mass destruction. "Chef Palmer, welcome to Stellar Bites," a melodic voice chirped behind him. Theo turned to find what appeared to be a 7-foot-tall praying mantis in a tailored business suit. Her exoskeleton gleamed under the kitchen lights in prismatic hues that shifted as she moved. "I am Vilara, your restaurant liaison," she said, extending one delicate limb in what she'd clearly been taught was a human greeting. "We're absolutely thrilled to have Earth represented in our establishment." Theo shook her appendage gently. "Thanks, but there seems to be a problem. All my ingredients have been confiscated." Vilara's antennae drooped slightly. "Yes, well, there were some concerns raised during customs inspection. Your cooking substances registered as toxic on 17 different bioscanners." "It's just salt and pepper," Theo protested. "And some garlic powder. Maybe a little cayenne." "The cayenne tested as a level 9 irritant comparable to industrial-grade riot suppressant," Vilara said apologetically. "And the garlic. 3 delegates from the Folian Conclave had to be treated for respiratory distress just from the sealed container." Theo pinched the bridge of his nose. "How exactly am I supposed to cook without seasonings?" "We've provided substitutes." Vilara gestured enthusiastically toward a cabinet, all approved for multi-species consumption. The cabinet contained dozens of containers filled with various colored powders. Theo picked one up, labeled Universal Flavor Enhancer. He cautiously tasted a speck and immediately regretted it. It had all the flavor of wet cardboard with notes of sanitized plastic. "This tastes like nothing," he said flatly. "Exactly." Vilara's voice was bright with enthusiasm. "It's perfectly neutral across all known taste reception systems. Cost us a fortune to develop." "Great. 6 months in space to cook with the culinary equivalent of air." Through the kitchen's viewport, Theo could see the massive circular hub of Nexus Station, with spokes extending to various docking arms. Ships of all shapes and sizes orbited the station like mechanized planets around a steel sun. Beyond that, stars stretched into infinity, a constant reminder of just how far from home he really was. "The grand opening is in 3 solar cycles," Vilara continued. "All major diplomatic delegations will attend. We're counting on you to represent human cuisine with appropriate fanfare." "Fanfare? With no spices," Theo said dryly. "I'm sure you'll manage splendidly." Vilara's mandibles clicked in what Theo assumed was meant to be an encouraging smile. "After all, you were selected from thousands of applicants." As Vilara clicked away on her many legs, Theo turned back to the sterile, gleaming kitchen with its alien appliances and flavorless seasonings. Somehow, he had to create Earth cuisine that wouldn't kill the clientele while still actually tasting like food. "What have I gotten myself into?" he murmured. A notification chimed on his station tablet. It was an automated message, reminder: all Deathworld biologics must submit to daily decontamination protocols. Report to Level 4, Section 12 before rest cycle. Right. Because humans were classified as Deathworlder species from planets with such harsh conditions that they evolved to be naturally resilient. And apparently naturally dangerous. Theo sighed deeply. If they thought his spices were weapons, wait until they tried his grandmother's lasagna recipe. The next morning, Theo arrived in the kitchen to find it already occupied. A gelatinous blue creature with multiple eye stalks was anxiously hovering near the entrance, while a tall, thin alien with gray skin and an absurdly long neck was meticulously scanning every surface with a handheld device. Ah, the human arrives. The blue blob quivered with nervous energy. I am Manager Bloop. This is Health Inspector Newland. Newland didn't look up from his scanner, which emitted increasingly urgent beeps as it passed over Theo. Your biological form is emitting numerous toxins, Newland said, his voice as dry as the Sahara. Your skin actively sloughs bacteria. Your breath contains hydrogen and carbon compounds that would devastate several sentient fungi species. Good morning to you too, Theo replied. Manager Bloop wobbled anxiously. We simply must ensure that your unique biology doesn't interfere with food safety standards. Stellar Bites has a perfect health rating, and we intend to keep it that way. Look, Theo said, I can't cook Earth cuisine without Earth ingredients. That's like asking a crystallian to make ice sculptures without ice. Nevertheless, Newland intoned, elongating each syllable, regulations are clear. No substances that register above toxicity level 3 on the galactic scale. Which is basically everything from Earth, Theo muttered. Precisely. Newland's eyes glittered. Your home planet is classified as a Class 9 Deathworld. Even your water contains hydrogen dioxide, a known corrosive. Theo bit back a sarcastic reply about hydrogen dioxide being water. Please understand, Bloop gurgled anxiously. The station hosts 247 classified sentient species, each with different biochemistries. Your job is to create dishes that won't hospitalize our clientele. So I'm supposed to recreate Earth cuisine without anything from Earth? Exactly. Bloop brightened, clearly relieved that Theo understood. At that moment, the kitchen doors whooshed open and enambled the rest of the kitchen staff. Theo had been briefed on them, but seeing them in person was another matter entirely. First came Zyx, the pastry chef, a crystalline entity, who communicated through light pulses and temperature changes. Then Grundle, a squat reptilian with 4 arms who handled prep work with terrifying efficiency using very large knives. The dishwasher was some kind of aquatic creature named Splish who lived in the sink system. Finally, Meerok, a spindly orange-furred being with compound eyes who served as sous-chef. These are your colleagues, Bloop announced unnecessarily. Meerok approached Theo, blinking his compound eyes in what seemed like curiosity. Is it true that humans consume fermented grain toxins for pleasure? You mean beer? Yeah, we drink beer. A collective gasp went through the kitchen. Newland's scanner began to wail. Let's focus on today's challenge, Theo said quickly. I need to prepare sample dishes for the restaurant opening using only approved ingredients. The approved ingredients, as it turned out, were a culinary nightmare. Everything had been processed to the point of tastelessness. The meat substitute had the texture of foam and seemed to actively resist absorbing flavor. The vegetables were pale imitations, grown in sterile conditions that stripped them of any character. After hours of experimentation, Theo produced his first attempt at Earth cuisine, a sad approximation of spaghetti and meatballs that tasted like lightly salted nothing with a side of bland. Bloop took a tentative taste, and his entire body brightened. Marvelous. So mild and inoffensive. Newland grudgingly ran his scanner over the plate. It registers as edible for 82% of station species. Acceptable. Theo stared at them in disbelief. But it tastes terrible. Meerok, who had been watching closely, took a small bite and immediately spat it out. The human is correct. This lacks something. That something is flavor, Theo said flatly. As the others filed out, Meerok lingered behind. Human chef Theo, he said quietly. I believe I may know a solution to your problem. Meet me after shutdown cycle, near the recycling processors on level 8. Theo raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Meerok's mandibles clicked in what might have been a conspiratorial smile. Let's just say not all station regulations are strictly enforced. Level 8 of Nexus Station was decidedly less polished than the upper levels. The recycling sector hummed with a constant drone of machinery, punctuated by occasional hisses of steam. The lighting was dimmer here, casting long shadows down curved corridors that smelled faintly of ozone and something else Theo couldn't quite identify but reminded him vaguely of a subway station back on Earth. Meerok was waiting as promised, his orange fur almost glowing in the low light. "Follow me," he whispered, "and try to look like you belong here." They navigated through a maze of maintenance tunnels until they reached what appeared to be an ordinary wall panel. Meerok pressed his spindly fingers in a complex pattern, and the panel silently slid open. Beyond it lay what could only be described as a bazaar. Stalls lined a cavernous space, filled with items from across the galaxy, many sporting prohibited and restricted labels. Various species haggled in a dozen different languages, ducking in and out of pools of light. "Welcome to the Undermarket," Meerok said with undisguised pride. "Whatever the station prohibits you can find here for a price." Theo's eyes widened. "This is incredible. How does nobody know about this?" "Oh, everybody knows," Meerok clicked dismissively. "Station security included. They just pretend not to, as long as nothing too dangerous changes hands. It's a pressure valve for a station with too many regulations." They wound their way through the market until they reached a stall draped with iridescent fabric. Behind the counter stood, or rather, hovered a cloud of purple gas contained within a transparent exoskeleton suit. "Fizz," Meerok called out. "This is the human chef I told you about." The gaseous being drifted closer. "A Deathworlder." A mechanized voice emerged from the suit. "How fascinating. I hear you're in need of certain terrestrial items." "I need cooking ingredients," Theo confirmed. "Spices, herbs, possibly some actual vegetables that haven't had their souls removed in a lab." "Dangerous materials," Fizz's gas cloud swirled faster. "Very risky to import. Very expensive." "I don't have much money," Theo admitted. "Money isn't everything," Fizz replied. "Perhaps we can arrange a trade. I have many clients who would pay handsomely for authentic Deathworld cuisine. They crave the thrill." 20 minutes of negotiation later, Theo had secured a modest supply of earth spices, salt, pepper, garlic, basil, and even some cayenne, along with a few vegetables and some contraband olive oil. In exchange, he would prepare special meals for Fizz's adventurous clients once a week. As they made their way back to the restaurant level, Meerok explained his interest. "I am a culinary anthropologist," he said. "I study how different species relate to food. Humans are particularly fascinating. You seek out substances that cause pain." "You mean spicy food?" Theo laughed. "I guess we are weird that way." "On my home world, my research was considered frivolous," Meerok continued. "But I believe understanding food is understanding culture. I want to learn your human cooking ways." Back in the kitchen, after hours, Theo unpacked his contraband treasures. "First rule of cooking with actual flavor," he told Meerok, "is to build layers." Together, they prepared a simple pasta dish with garlic, olive oil, and herbs, basic aglio e olio. When it was finished, Meerok hesitantly tasted a small portion. His compound eyes widened dramatically. "It burns." "But pleasantly?" He took another bite. "Fascinating. The discomfort enhances the experience." Theo grinned. "Welcome to human cuisine." "We must be careful," Meerok warned as they cleaned up. "If Health Inspector Nolan discovers these ingredients, he'll shut down the restaurant before it opens." "Then we'll need to be strategic," Theo mused. "Maybe we can create 2 menus, one bland enough to pass inspection, and another with the real deal for those who want the authentic experience." "A secret menu," Meerok clicked excitedly. "Yes, culinary contraband." As they finished cleaning up, Theo felt hopeful for the first time since arriving. Maybe this assignment wouldn't be a complete disaster after all. Little did he know that his troubles were just beginning. Word spread quickly through Nexus Station about the human chef. Initially, it was just whispers, rumors of a Deathworlder cooking with actual Deathworld ingredients. Then came the daring first customers, thrill-seekers looking for the culinary equivalent of an extreme sport. "I survived human food." Became something of a station-wide bragging right. species that could tolerate it, mostly other omnivores, and a surprising number of silicon-based life forms began showing up in increasing numbers. Stellar Bites now had two distinct services. The official menu featured bland, sanitized approximations of Earth cuisine that satisfied the health regulations. But those in the know would use certain code phrases to access what staff had begun calling the danger menu. "I'd like something that reminds me of Earth sunsets," meant they wanted something with a kick. Theo found himself becoming something of a celebrity. He'd come to work to find lines of aliens waiting to experience the culinary equivalent of a roller coaster. Some brought medical monitors. Others signed actual waivers that Bloop had created in a fit of bureaucratic panic. Even manager Bloop had reluctantly embraced their new reputation, especially after seeing the profits. His gelatinous form now pulsed with contented blues rather than anxious greens. "Reservations are booked 3 cycles in advance," he gurgled happily to Theo one morning. "We've never been so profitable." Meerok had proven an invaluable ally. His 4-armed efficiency kept the kitchen running while his natural curiosity led to fascinating fusion dishes. He'd developed a particular fondness for garlic, which made his fur emit a faint glow, apparently a sign of contentment in his species. The only dark cloud was Health Inspector Newland, who seemed increasingly suspicious. His inspections became more frequent and thorough, his scanner sweeping every surface with maddening precision. "I detect trace anomalies," he said during one inspection, his long neck extending to peer into overhead vents. "Molecular signatures inconsistent with approved ingredients." "Probably just residue from my natural human biology," Theo replied innocently. "We Deathworlders perspire all sorts of weird compounds." Newland's eyes narrowed to slits. "Perhaps." The cat-and-mouse game continued for weeks. Theo and Meerok became experts at hiding their contraband ingredients in clever compartments built by Grundle, who turned out to be something of a mechanical genius when not chopping vegetables at terrifying speeds. Then came the news that changed everything. Gastrogalactic magazine is sending their chief critic, Bloop announced, his entire body practically vibrating with anxiety. Critic Phalax, the most influential food writer in 3 sectors. "Isn't that good news?" Theo asked. "Good? It's terrifying." Bloop wobbled dramatically. "Phalax has shut down restaurants with a single review. And they're notorious for demanding off-menu items to test a chef's true abilities." Theo exchanged glances with Meerok. Their secret menu was exactly the kind of thing Phalax would demand and exactly the kind of evidence Newland needed to shut them down. "When are they coming?" Theo asked. "Tomorrow." Bloop's color shifted to a sickly yellow. "And that's not all. Station administration is sending a special security detail to escort them, including additional health and safety officers." Of course they were. Just when things were going well. That night after closing, Theo met with Fizz to secure extra supplies. The gaseous dealer was unusually agitated, his purple form swirling rapidly in his containment suit. "Bad timing," Fizz hissed through his translator. "Station security increased patrols. Difficult to move product." Nevertheless, Theo left with enough contraband spices to create a masterpiece if he could keep them hidden until the critical moment. As he made his way back through the maintenance corridors, a familiar voice stopped him cold. Well, what do we have here?" Theo turned slowly to find Health Inspector Newland, his scanner already beeping ominously as it detected the contents of Theo's bag. "I believe," Newland said with cold satisfaction, "we have a serious violation of station health code to discuss." The day of Critic Phalax's visit arrived with all the subtlety of a supernova. Station security officers in formal uniforms patrolled the restaurant perimeter. Bloop had changed colors no fewer than 17 times in the past hour, cycling through various shades of nervous. Theo, meanwhile, was facing his own crisis. After his encounter with Newland, he'd been forced to dump most of his contraband ingredients down a waste chute. Newland had confiscated the rest, but surprisingly, had not immediately shut down the restaurant. "I'll be conducting a full inspection during the critic's visit," he had said with a thin smile. "I want to see exactly how you've been bypassing our safety protocols." One violation, just one, and stellar bites become stellar bits. Now Theo stood in his kitchen with a decimated pantry and the biggest review of his career looming. Meerok and the rest of the staff watched him anxiously. "What's the plan, chef?" Meerok asked quietly. Theo ran his hands through his hair. "I honestly don't know. We can't serve the official menu to Phalanx, it's terrible. But we don't have any of our secret ingredients either." At that moment, the kitchen doors swung open. A procession entered, led by what appeared to be a floating brain in a hovering crystal container. Tendrils extended from the brain, manipulating a complex array of sensory instruments. "Presenting Critic Phalanx of Gastro-Galactic Magazine," announced a uniformed officer. Behind Phalanx came Nulon, looking smugly triumphant, and a visibly trembling Bloop. So came a telepathic voice that somehow managed to sound simultaneously bored and condescending. "This is the infamous human chef." Theo straightened his back. "Welcome to Stellar Bites. It's an honor to have you here. I've heard fascinating things about your unconventional approach." Phalanx's brain pulsed slightly. "I understand there are 2 menus in this establishment?" Newland's neck extended with interest, his scanner already whirring to life. "Just one official menu," Theo said carefully, "though I do try to accommodate special requests when possible." "Indeed. Then I request your most authentic human dish, something that showcases the true essence of Earth cuisine." Newland looked like he might levitate with glee. This was exactly the trap he'd been waiting for. "I'd be happy to prepare something special," Theo replied, thinking frantically. "Perhaps you'd like to observe the process?" "Delightful." Phalanx's brain bobbed in what might have been a nod. Now Theo just had to figure out how to create something spectacular with nothing but approved flavorless ingredients, while under the microscopic scrutiny of both a renowned critic and a vengeful health inspector. No pressure. He started by gathering what he had: the bland protein substitute, the characterless vegetables, the universal flavor enhancers that tasted like sanitized cardboard. "First," he announced, trying to sound confident, "we begin with a base of protein." As he worked, he kept up a running commentary, partly to distract from the mediocrity of his ingredients and partly to buy time while he desperately tried to think of a solution. Meerok watched with growing concern. The other kitchen staff sensed the tension. Zex was literally crystallizing with stress, and Grundle's chopping had accelerated to a dangerous blur. Then inspiration struck. "In human cuisine," Theo said casually, "we often incorporate ingredients from our surroundings. It's an ancient tradition called foraging." He glanced significantly at Meerok, who blinked in confusion before his compound eyes widened in understanding. "Yes," Meerok clicked enthusiastically. "Human chef often demonstrates this technique." While continuing his cooking demonstration, Theo subtly gestured toward various items around the kitchen that weren't technically food but might contain compounds similar to earth flavors. Meerok got the message. While everyone's attention was on Theo, the sous-chef began collecting items: a bit of the cleaning solution that contained citric acid, enzyme powders from Nexus Station that might approximate umami flavors, even some of the mineral oil used to maintain Grundle's knives. It was a desperate plan, but it was the only one they had. Nulon grew increasingly frustrated as his scanner detected nothing objectionable in the ingredients Theo was openly using. Meanwhile, Meerok surreptitiously passed his collected enhancers to Theo, who incorporated them with sleight of hand worthy of a street magician. The kitchen became a chaotic scene of coordinated desperation. Splish accidentally splashed water, creating distractions at key moments. Grundle's aggressive chopping drew the eye whenever Theo needed to add something questionable. Zex strategically adjusted the lighting by manipulating his crystalline body to cast shadows in helpful places. Through it all, Theo cooked like a man possessed, turning what should have been a bland disaster into something that at least looked and smelled intriguing. Finally, with a flourish, he plated his creation, a reimagined pasta dish that contained not a single actual earth ingredient, but somehow gave the impression of Italian cuisine through sheer force of will and creative chemistry. "I present stellar synthesis spaghetti," Theo announced, placing the dish before Phalanx with all the confidence he could muster. The critic's sensory tendrils extended, analyzing the dish from every angle. The kitchen fell silent. Even Newland's scanner seemed to hold its breath. Phalanx's brain pulsed thoughtfully as the critic's sensory tendrils probed, prodded, and finally tasted Theo's improvised creation. The silence in the kitchen was so complete you could have heard a microbe sneeze. After what felt like several small eternities, Phalanx's telepathic voice resonated in their minds. It's fascinating. That was it. Just fascinating. Impossible to tell if it was good fascinating or horrified fascinating. Newland's scanner whirred eagerly, hovering over the plate. I'm detecting several unauthorized compounds, he announced triumphantly. Chemical signatures inconsistent with approved ingredients. Of course you are, Phalanx replied dismissively. That's what makes it interesting. Newland's neck stiffened in confusion. But regulations clearly state. Regulations, Phalanx interrupted, are for the unimaginative. Do you know why I came to this establishment, Inspector? Newland blinked rapidly. To evaluate the food? To experience danger. Phalanx's brain pulsed with what might have been excitement. Do you have any idea how boring it is to be a culinary critic in a sanitized galaxy? Every restaurant serving the same safe, approved flavors. Nothing surprising. Nothing challenging. Theo exchanged shocked glances with Meerok. What this human has created, Phalanx continued, is not merely food. It's an experience. A culinary adventure that flirts with disaster. The slight burn of these cleaning compounds, the tangy bite of maintenance fluids, the complex umami of industrial adhesives, brilliant improvisation. You like it? Theo asked cautiously. Like it. I'm publishing my review as we speak. Phalanx's tendrils twitched in what might have been the equivalent of typing. 5 galactic stars. Stellar bites where danger meets deliciousness. Bloop's gelatinous form nearly collapsed with relief, shimmering in happy blues and purples. Newland wasn't giving up so easily. This is a clear health code violation. I must insist. Inspector, Phalanx interrupted again, perhaps you're unaware that I sit on the Galactic Health Board's Advisory Committee. I'll be recommending a new classification for human cuisine adventure dining, with its own separate regulatory framework. Newland deflated visibly, his neck retracting several inches. Now then, Phalanx turned back to Theo. I understand you have a secret supplier of actual Earth ingredients? I would very much like an introduction. 3 months later, Stellar Bites had become the most famous restaurant on Nexus Station. A new airlock had been installed at the entrance, with warning signs in 17 languages. Caution, Deathworld cuisine beyond this point. Enter at your own risk. The warning, of course, only increased the restaurant's popularity. Species from across the galaxy made detours to the station specifically to survive a meal prepared by the infamous human chef and his intrepid alien staff. Newland had been reassigned to a less prestigious position inspecting waste recycling facilities. In his place, a new health inspector coincidentally recommended by critic Phalanx took a much more flexible approach to the newly established adventure dining regulations. Fizz had gone legitimate, more or less, opening Deathworld Imports, a specialized shop catering to thrill-seeking alien chefs. Theo received a generous supplier discount. Manager Bloop had embraced their dangerous reputation with surprising enthusiasm, even sampling some of the milder human dishes himself, though his color always shifted to alarmed oranges when he did so. As for Meerok, he had become something of a celebrity in academic circles, publishing a groundbreaking paper titled Deathworld Gastronomy, The Cultural Significance of Voluntary Discomfort in Human Cuisine. On this particular evening, after the restaurant had closed, Theo and his staff gathered around a table to share a meal, a tradition they had established. Each brought something from their native cuisine, creating what was possibly the most diverse and potentially hazardous potluck in the galaxy. To think, Meerok clicked, sipping cautiously at a glass of human wine, that your entire species consumes brain-altering fermented fruit for pleasure. And you eat crystallized light, Theo countered, nodding towards X's contribution to the meal. "We've received another invitation," Bloop announced, reading from a tablet. "The Galactic Culinary Academy wants you to give a guest lecture on cooking with compounds classified as weapons in 7 systems." Theo laughed. "Should I demonstrate my grandmother's chili recipe? That might actually qualify as a Geneva Convention violation." The others didn't get the reference, but they laughed anyway. As the evening wound down, a final delivery arrived, a package from Earth. Theo opened it to find several bottles of hot sauce with a note from his sister. "Heard you're teaching aliens about spicy food. These should help escalate the interstellar incident." Theo grinned as he examined the labels: Ghost Pepper, Carolina Reaper, Trinidad Scorpion. These weren't just hot sauces, they were thermonuclear flavor weapons. "What are those?" Meerok asked, his compound eyes focusing on the bottles. "The next chapter in our culinary adventure," Theo replied with a mischievous smile. Grundle peered at the warning label on one bottle and actually took a step back. "Is that skull and crossbones symbol not universal for deadly poison?" "On Earth," Theo explained, "it just means delicious." As his alien colleagues exchanged nervous glances, Theo couldn't help but laugh. Humans might be classified as Deathworlders, their kitchens might be considered arsenals, and their spice racks might trigger biohazard alarms, but in the end, that just made dinner more interesting. And in a galaxy of bland conformity, interesting was exactly what everyone secretly craved.